Welcome to Health for Life, your trusted source for health and wellness insights, proudly presented by Vitruvian Health, the comprehensive healthcare system serving Northwest Georgia and Southern Tennessee with leading entities like Hamilton Medical Center and Bradley Medical Center. We're dedicated to keeping our communities healthy and thriving.
Today we're talking with Dr. Natalie Bessom, a board-certified family medicine physician at Hamilton Primary Care in Dalton. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about something that a lot of people seem to struggle with, and that is this thing called resistant weight loss.
Oh, absolutely. Every day at my office, I see this. People are asking to lose weight. They say that they've tried everything. And a lot of times we go in depth with that, diet, exercise, and that's not the whole story.
I do hear a lot of the times when people are gaining weight or having issues losing weight, they will blame it on something. Is there true reality to those statements?
Possibly. There is the occasional 1 out of 100 that, they have thyroid malfunction and we can test blood work for something like that. Certainly it is always harder for women to lose weight after menopause without all the hormones. But I also see the opposite is that people start hormones with, a specialist or somebody, and the opposite actually happens. They gain more weight because that's not always the answer. Males, that's a different category where they think their testosterone might be low. A lot of times testosterone could be low, but it's for other reasons, for chronic disease reasons, or lifestyle things.
So there's definitely some real validity in that, but it's not like the whole picture here.
It's less common for sure. I mean, certainly, yes, those things can really disrupt your weight loss, but most of the time it's something else in your daily habits that is just not being attentive to your sleep, for example, stress levels off the chart. If you're snoring at night, maybe you have sleep apnea. These are the more common things that I see when people come for what they call resistant weight loss.
Is there a real culprit when somebody is seemingly doing everything that they possibly can and it's still just not working?
Yes, especially with younger people who have less chronic disease and things like this. I would say 9 times out of 10, the answer is your stress. And we're all stressed. I mean, that's our society these days, but it is really negatively impacting your overall health on a day-to-day basis. But also, if you're trying and really putting forth the effort, it will stall those behaviors because of the instinctual part of that stress, throwing up all those stress hormones.
There's something about how cortisol can affect weight too, right?
Absolutely. So adrenaline, cortisol, all those stress hormones are actually holding hormones. They will hold every calorie that you take in during the day because it's saying, oh, I need more fuel because I'm running. I'm having a high heart rate, so I have to fuel that thing with these extra calories. But if it's mental stress, you're definitely not exerting yourself anymore. So a lot of those calories are just getting stored in the end. And that is such a dangerous cycle.
I like that you brought up some younger people, because I feel like with homework and tests and deadlines and finals, that can seriously add up.
Absolutely. We are stressing people at younger and younger ages. That is absolutely true. And I hate that because that chronic stress really degrades a lot of your functioning in your body. Like I talked about before, sometimes your heart rate would go up or your blood pressure goes up under stress. If we have, 10, 11-year-olds doing that all during the school year, you can only imagine what their blood pressure might look like at 20. So we really need to do some self-care. Everybody, every age needs to learn about some self-care too to help with future stress, but also with weight loss in the future.
Is there a factor on how sleep and how much sleep you get could also be a big player in this?
Sure. Who doesn't love a good night's sleep? You just feel so good the next day. And that's your body saying, good job. Loved that. There's so many complex answers about why somebody can't get to sleep. So if your mind's running, that anxiety, those stress hormones are keeping you alert. But, also you can have people who just can't stay asleep, or they're going to the bathroom every couple minutes or something like this. So if that's something that you're struggling with, please talk to your doctor. We need to figure out why you're not sleeping. And that could be the root cause of a lot of other dysfunction. Anxiety is higher during the day. If you're not getting good sleep, you are more irritable. You're taking on a lot more cravings because your body's like, oh, we need extra calories. We can barely stay awake. Or if you're like me, working night shift way back, you crave the bad stuff because that's the quick fuel, hot chocolate or, these empty calories, sugar to keep you awake. And so if you're not getting good sleep, you you have a lot more cravings, and it's hard not to give in to those when you're feeling so tired and vulnerable.
I definitely think for me, and like for a lot of probably people around my age nowadays, where like the technology and the phones, the computer is like what keeps us up way too long.
Yes. There's a lot of data lately that the blue light, the background of your screen, or even clocks that are not red tinted or low or turn off. Some clocks actually turn off until they see you wake up and look at them. All of those life signals go into parts of your brain that are circadian rhythm synchronized, and they look for light to say, it's morning, time to get up. But it's a fake light, it's from your device instead of the actual sunlight. So be so aware. And for kids too, they say not to charge your device in your room and things like that. Even if it's not you're not looking at it. Sometimes there's other waves and light that can be coming off of the phone through the night that will affect your brain.
But that's a good point, because for the longest time I would charge my phone like directly next to me.
Yeah.
And then at some point I was like, it was becoming a big distraction. So I just put it across the room.
Yes, that's great. Or even just outside of the room and use the old school clock. I know that's so hard, and people have their alarm, like certain days you need an alarm, certain days you don't, or certain days there's this time. I get that, but they have smart clocks that can do that for you. You don't have to have your device, and, God forbid you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep, and then you go on your phone. Then you're really not going back to sleep.
I switched to a real alarm clock in this past year, and it's helped me like more than anything else.
Absolutely. The good old ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
Because I would have multiple days where I would wake up late. Like my alarm wouldn't wake me up, or I would somehow like turn my alarm off. I would just reach over in my sleep.
Yes.
And just turn it off.
Absolutely.
But then when I get the real alarm clock, it fixed everything. I wake up on time.
Yes. Well, hey, how about that? I know it's kind of like usually an abrasive sound, but sometimes that's the one that gets you up and ready to go.
Yep. It definitely is.
Yeah.
Because with the phones, they make it a little too calm.
Yes. You can pick what you like, and sometimes it's just not getting you up.
I mean, with sleep, and if you're very sleep deprived, can that like make you just feel like, I mean, like you were saying, you need more out of that, and like you are very just deprived of things. Yes.
Well, if you're up earlier, you're awake more hours in the day, you need more fuel. So, they used to say the breakfast is the best meal or the first meal of the day. And that's somewhat true. If you feed your body early, you will not get as intense cravings later on. But if you're getting up at 5 a.m., you have a long time before lunch. So you are bound to get those cravings before the natural time for another meal. So definitely either making good choices if that's your schedule and you just can't get out of it. Some people, unfortunately have a lifestyle that they can't get more sleep, but we still need to choose healthy and give the right fuel to our body so that it feels like it's getting fuel and not just quick burning energy that's gone in 30 minutes.
That's very important to learn too, because like I when I started doing radio, I do the morning shift, and so I'm up at about like 3:30 every day, and
that sounds terrible.
It's very rough sometimes.
Yes.
But when I started, but it's fully dependent on how I treat it, because I can just go to bed earlier.
Yeah.
And then eat maybe something a little more energy providing.
Yeah.
Earlier in the day, and I feel a little better.
Well, how about caffeine? Did you go through the caffeine cravings?
I started drinking coffee.
Yeah. Well, you kind of have to at 3:30. That's hard.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I see as a vicious cycle. You're tired, so you drink more caffeine. Well, guess what? It's harder to fall asleep when you have more of that pulsing through your veins. One fact about caffeine is that the half-life is 12 hours. And half-life means that that's when half of the substance or the medicine is gone in your body. So picture this. If you have a 16-ounce Keurig or coffee from Starbucks or whatever, if you have it at 7 a.m., at 7 p.m., you still have half of a cup of coffee in your system.
Oh.
Yes. Whoa. So if you drink more than 16 ounces, you are going to have it still in your veins by 7 a.m. the next morning. So just think about that. You really have to, caffeine is a powerful, I hate to say drug, but substance. It's addictive. It does fuel you, but too much can really have a negative impact on your health.
Getting back into like sleeping habits, I I'm very glad I don't suffer with this, but like sleep apnea.
Oh, yes. And for some reason, I find that this is the hardest one to get my patients to treat, although it has probably the best impact on the way you feel and also your long-term outcomes on health. Definitely the incidence of sleep apnea has increased as we have more people who are obese, overweight, because a lot of the cause is obstructive sleep apnea. So you have skin or soft tissue in the back of the neck that actually obstructs the airflow when you're lying back at night and your tongue is relaxed and kind of slouching back in your mouth. So snoring can be one tip. Daytime sleepiness, excessive amounts when there's no other reason why. People can just sit on the couch and doze off, or God forbid, if you're dozing off at a stoplight or something like that, you need to talk to your doctor. Sleep apnea is one of the things that I find can help weight loss, because if you're sending up the stress hormones like you're smothering in the middle of the night, your brain is keeping tabs on that all night. And so having stress hormones when you're supposed to be relaxing, wow, watch out. The excessive cravings, the sleepiness and everything will definitely catch up with you. The other thing is long-term benefits. Sleep apnea, it starts to feed back pressure from the lungs to the heart. So the heart kind of starts to enlarge over times where you're, pulling in extra air against a pressure to snore. And so if you picture a latex balloon, and it's not inflated, and you take a Sharpie and put a black dot on it, and then you blow it up. The black dot looks a lot bigger, right? So we have a rhythm center in a part of our heart that it's like that black dot. If you have a regular size heart, the cells in that area that control the regular rhythm and the pulsation at a regular rate, they talk to each other and they're very closely synchronized. When you have sleep apnea and you start enlarging or dilating the chambers of the heart, those cells are not close to each other anymore, so they can't talk and communicate. So atrial fibrillation, a lot of the arrhythmias that people suffer with later that also cause strokes, heart attacks, those all could be originated from sleep apnea that wasn't treated decades ago. Yes, I know. And I feel like a lot of people, they just hear, I have to wear a machine or I have to wear a mask, and they're like, nah, I'm not doing it. We have other ways of treating it, I will say that. But, if you could lose the weight and be off of that machine in a few months or a year or something, it's totally worth making the lifestyle changes, but also getting it treated so that you're not suffering with these long-term health outcomes.
I know multiple people who use they're the CPAP machines, right?
CPAP, BiPAP, mm-hmm.
And they actually love them.
That is a common thing. Yes. So I have a lot of patients who get their sleep apnea treated, and at first it's like, oh my gosh, this thing is so weird. How am I going to use it? But once you get a good night's sleep on it, you can't go without it. They take it on vacation. They find the smallest machine possible so that it could be portable. And if they miss it, watch out, buddy. It is just, their day is wrecked.
For people listening to this, these topics are so relatable to where so many people have to deal with it. Is there any general advice you would just give people who are just very frustrated with their habits, I guess, and what they could do to help themselves?
Fruits, vegetables, nuts and beans, drink plenty of water, try to get some movement, and reduce your stress, get good night's sleeps. Yeah. I know it's easier said than done, but if you have problems following through with any of those things I just said, talk to your doctor, because there are things that maybe you could be educated on that could help, or we could go through your daily habits and give you advice about how to change certain things. But those pillars really could reverse your chronic disease, prevent chronic disease, make you feel so much better so that you can get through your life without as many struggles.
Just thank you seriously once again for joining us on the show.
Yeah, great to be here. Love doing these shows. Love education. I think that, there's so much information that it makes my job hard because it's not as straightforward anymore. And I love when people come with all these questions, but most of them, you just have to be so careful with what you hear and read.
If you are in need of a primary care provider, you can make an appointment with Dr. Bessom at Hamilton Primary Care at 706-226-9355. Dr. Natalie Bessom is a board-certified family medicine physician, and Hamilton Primary Care is a family practice, which means that they can treat your whole family. Call 706-226-9355 to make an appointment, or visit vitruvianhealth.com/primary for more information.
This program in no way seeks to diagnose or treat illness or to replace professional medical care. Please see your healthcare provider if you have a health problem.
Thank you for listening to Health for Life, a presentation of Vitruvian Health, formerly Hamilton Healthcare System.